I woke up to the sound of laughter and the unmistakable clatter of metal gates swinging open. For a split second, I thought I was still dreaming, but then I heard that piercing voice, a voice that could only belong to one person on this planet, Linda. She'd been making my life miserable ever since she took over as president of the HOA. The fact that I didn't even live under the HOA's jurisdiction never seemed to faze her. I threw on a flannel shirt and jeans, stormed outside, and what I saw sent my blood pressure through the roof. A crowd had gathered on my ranch, my private property, while Linda stood front and center, waving her arms like some kind of self-appointed tour guide. Behind her, a row of fancy horses stood saddled and ready, their riders adjusting helmets. Banners proclaiming HOA Equestrian Gala fluttered in the morning breeze, strung up between my barn and fence posts, as if I'd ever agreed to this nonsense. "Linda," I shouted, marching toward her. "What in the hell is going on?" She turned, flashing that smug, patronizing grin, the one that always signaled she was about to say something absurd and act like it made perfect sense. "Oh, good morning. Isn't this lovely? We decided to hold our community's first annual equestrian event right here on your ranch. Doesn't it just bring everyone together?" I blinked, struggling to process her sheer nerve. "You decided? On my land?" Without asking, Linda chuckled, waving a hand like I'd just said something trivial. "Oh, don't be such a grouch. We all know your ranch is part of the greater community, even if you refuse to pay your fair share of HOA dues." "My fair?" I stopped myself before I lost it completely. "Linda, this is private property. I didn't sign up for this. You and your whole circus need to pack up and get out." Gasps rippled through the crowd, as if I'd just insulted their collective honor. A woman in a pearl necklace clutched her chest dramatically, while a guy in a polo shirt muttered something about neighborhood spirit. Linda gave me that pitying look she reserved for people she thought were beneath her, like she was dealing with a child who didn't grasp the adult world. "Oh, honey," she said, "I get that you feel left out, but this is a community event. We sent out flyers and everything. It's for the good of everyone." I glanced at the crowd. HOA members were sipping lemonade from a refreshment table, some snapping selfies in front of my barn like they'd arrived at a ritzy country club instead of a working ranch. My blood was boiling, but I forced myself to stay calm. Linda thrived on drama. She loved playing the victim the moment anyone pushed back. "Linda," I said through clenched teeth, "you've got 5 minutes to clear out, or I'm calling the sheriff." She gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "How dare you threaten legal action against your own neighbors? That's so unkind." A few of her followers murmured in agreement, shooting me dirty looks like I was the bad guy. Linda stepped closer, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. "We're just using your ranch for a few hours. Besides, what kind of man would deny children the joy of horseback riding?" Right on cue, a group of bratty kids ran by, swinging fancy riding crops. One of them whacked a fence post like it was a piñata. My horses, well-trained and valuable, watched with twitching ears. One wrong tug on a rein by some careless kid, and I'd be staring down a disaster, or a lawsuit. Linda must have noticed my hesitation because she leaned in, her tone turning icy. "Be reasonable. It's just one day. You don't want to make enemies with the entire HOA board, do you?" There it was, the veiled threat. She'd done this before, making life hell for anyone who didn't bow to her whims. I gave her a slow, knowing smile. "Fine," I said, stepping back. "You win, Linda. Enjoy your event." She blinked, caught off guard by my sudden surrender. She'd expected a fight, maybe even a tantrum. Instead, I nodded politely and turned back toward the barn. The moment I was out of sight, I pulled out my phone and called my ranch hand, Sam. "Sam," I said, keeping my voice low, "I need you to do something. Go to the tack room, take every saddle off those horses, and replace them with cowbells. The biggest, loudest ones we've got." There was a pause, then Sam let out a quiet laugh. "You're insane." "Maybe," I replied, watching Linda strut around my property like she owned the place. But it's time she learned what happens when you mess with a rancher. That night, as the last HOA members left to rest up for their big day, I worked in the shadows, fastening a cowbell to each horse where the saddles had been. It was a careful job, tight enough to stay on, loose enough to cause chaos the moment someone sat down. By sunrise, the event was set to start. HOA folks rolled in with their pristine riding gear, acting like they were about to compete in the Olympics instead of prance around for likes on social media. Linda stood at the front, delivering a grand speech about heritage and elite equestrian traditions, her voice booming like a politician on the campaign trail. I leaned against the fence, arms crossed, waiting. One by one, the riders climbed onto their horses. The second their weight hit the cowbells, the air erupted with a deafening clang of metal. The horses freaked out, eyes wide, nostrils flaring, and then all hell broke loose. The first horse bolted. The second bucked so hard its rider flipped backward. In moments, the whole line was in a full-on panic, galloping every which way, cowbells jangling like a deranged orchestra. Riders screamed, clutching reins, tumbling into the dirt. And then there was Linda. She'd picked the biggest horse, a massive black stallion that now looked like a wild beast. The cowbell under her clanged like a fire alarm as she clung on, her smug grin replaced by pure terror. The horse reared, she shrieked, and then, in a scene straight out of a comedy, Linda sailed through the air, arms flailing, legs kicking, before landing face first in the biggest, stinkiest manure pile on my ranch. Silence fell. Then a lone laugh broke through, followed by another, until the whole crowd was howling. I took a deep, satisfied breath, savoring the sweet smell of justice. Welcome to the ranch, Linda. The sun was barely up when the first HOA riders arrived the next day, their spotless boots clicking on the dirt like they were stepping into a luxury resort instead of a working ranch. The air buzzed with entitlement, as if they genuinely believed they were about to star in some high-society spectacle. Linda was at the forefront, smirking in the most over-the-top riding outfit imaginable, less for riding, more for basking in her followers' adoration as she played queen of the horse world. I watched from a distance, pretending to fiddle with a fence post. A few HOA types shot me suspicious glances, probably expecting trouble after our spat the day before. I smiled and nodded, playing the gracious host. They had no clue what was coming, and that was the fun part. Linda clapped her hands, commanding attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first annual HOA Equestrian Gala. This isn't just about riding. It's about tradition, grace, and, above all, community. She swept her arms wide, like she was addressing a royal court. Thank you all for your generous donations. Every penny will go toward future HOA events that make our neighborhood so special. Applause broke out. Of course, donations. Linda never lifted a finger without a profit motive. I wondered how many of these people had shelled out cash just to be part of her show. Judging by their rapt attention, probably most of them. She gestured toward the horses, standing innocently in a row, oblivious to the chaos I'd rigged. Now, she declared, it's time for our riders to mount up and display their skills. This will be a day to remember. Oh, Linda, I thought, you have no idea. The riders stepped forward, adjusting helmets and reaching for saddles, or where saddles should have been. The first hint of confusion flickered as a woman in a fancy riding jacket frowned, poking at a cowbell. Excuse me, she called out. Where are the saddles? Linda barely glanced her way, waving dismissively. Oh, they're there. Just sit down and get comfortable. That was all the push they needed. A few hesitated, but Linda's word was gospel, and soon they were climbing onto the horses, back straight, noses in the air. Then the first rider sat. The moment her weight hit the cowbell, a loud clang echoed across the field. Her horse jolted, spooked by the noise, and took off at a dead run. She shrieked, bouncing wildly, legs flapping as she clung to the reins. It was like dominoes. One by one, every rider sat, triggering a symphony of clanging cowbells. The horses lost it, bolting, bucking, galloping in every direction. Riders screamed, flailing as they tried to hang on. One guy, clearly a newbie, hugged his horse's neck like a kid on a runaway ride. A woman in white tumbled headfirst into a water trough as her horse veered off. And then there was Linda. She'd saved the grandest horse for herself, a towering black stallion that now looked possessed. She swung on board with regal confidence, oblivious to the chaos. The second she sat, the cowbell let out a monstrous clang. Her horse reared, neighing wildly, and took off like a rocket. Linda's scream pierced the air, her perfect hair whipping in the wind, her pricey jacket flapping like a cape. The terror on her face was priceless. I'd treasure it forever. Her horse charged through the event, toppling tables and scattering lemonade cups. A tray of sandwiches hit the dirt as she flailed. Then, in a twist of poetic fate, it veered toward the manure pile. Time slowed as the horse swerved, and Linda, barely hanging on, lost her grip. She flew through the air, shrieking, and landed with a wet squelch face first in the muck. Silence settled over the chaos. The horses panted, riders groaned, dusting themselves off. A woman in pearls lay flat on her back, muttering about quitting horses forever. Then someone laughed, a small, stifled chuckle. Another joined in, then another, until the whole crowd was roaring, pointing at their fallen queen, now dripping in humiliation. I stepped forward, grinning. Well, Linda, looks like your equestrian event was a hit. Her mouth flapped, but no words came. She trembled with fury, fists clenched, face red beneath the filth. Then, without a sound, she turned and stomped off, the squish of manure in her boots stripping away any shred of dignity. Linda stormed off, leaving a trail of muck and shattered pride. The crowd hovered between laughter and disbelief, some helping fallen riders, others just staring. A few kids pointed and giggled like they'd seen the funniest thing ever.